I'm so amazed at you because we started doing live shows, but during the whole pandemic, you really participated in your career by doing live streams and building your fans that way. I'm just so amazed at you. Tell me a little bit about how that started.
Well, when I got over the shock of the pandemic after a few months of not doing any music and having all of my live shows canceled and my tour,
Oh, right.
I just started seeing other people live streaming, and I had live streamed in the past. And so I thought, let's do some live stream shows. And at first, there was a big learning curve with the sound, because I was trying to make it more advanced, and so I bought some equipment and all that, and then I ended up just abandoning that and just having my iPhone with no mic or anything, and that was the way it was the best, just natural. And I just started performing live streams, and people really liked that because they were sick of Netflix, possibly. And I just especially with live streaming, you could really interact with the audience in the chat.
Right.
So that was fun. And it worked out really well for me as far as not getting totally disconnected from my fan base and my friends.
All right. So my next question is, you've been recording this EP with Ed Tree.
Yes.
All right, he's a very good guitar player, engineer, and producer. He produced some of my music, which you know.
Yep.
But I've heard a track from it that you released called Keep It Together that is an amazing. If you haven't heard this track, you have to hear it. It's probably one of my favorite songs of all time. It's really a good song.
Thank you.
Tell me how you were inspired by that song.
Well, funny story. I was binge watching Californication with David Duchovny. Do you know that show?
No.
That was from, gosh, was it the 90s? Or maybe 2000s? Probably 2000s. I have to see the date. So I was watching Californication, and David Duchovny plays a writer. And in one of the episodes, he was talking to whoever, and he said, keep it together while falling apart. And I thought, that's kind of profound, and it also spoke to me at the time of what I was going through in my life. Because, and then part of the words that I made around that, feel what you feel, see what you see, a friend is wanting to know where you are, keep it together while falling apart. I was just going through those emotions of, I'm going through all this stuff here in LA. That was a few years ago when I wrote that song, and it was a really stressful time. And I wanted to feel those feelings, but I wanted to keep it together while falling apart, but the falling apart was a functional falling apart, more of like a metaphor. The keep it together is like the containment of the falling apart. So it's like inside I'm feeling my emotions, and it does feel like I'm falling apart, but yet I'm keeping it together.
Well, I think a lot of people can relate to that, especially during the pandemic, and just in life in general. Life in general is not easy. Well, it is easy, but not really.
No, I wrote it as a self-help song, for sure.
Well, it inspired me. It inspired me, so that's good. Let's see, I have I might have a couple more questions for you. So, you and Ed have been playing together for how long now?
5 years, I think. 5 or 6 years.
And you must have rehearsed during the pandemic because you two are very tight on stage. I just did a show with them, and they were amazing. It was like you just blend so well together, and your big voice. You have an amazing voice.
Thank you.
And so did you rehearse a lot during the pandemic?
You know, I mean, we always play music together because we live together. Ed is my guitarist and partner and amazing recording engineer and producer. And so, around the house, we don't have a TV, so we play music together. And I mean, part of it, Ed has always been good. Like, he's
Yeah.
just amazing, and he has a lot of experience. Me, part of us gelling more together on stage is as I got better. When I moved to LA 8 years ago, I was just starting to do music in a more professional manner as far as taking it seriously and wanting to up my game and get better. I played music all my life, but I wasn't very good until my late 30s. So, and then meeting Ed and playing with Ed, who's, you know, way up here as far as talent. I mean, that definitely...
Well, you're way up here too. You're way up here.
Thank you. But it definitely made me reach for something more with my music.
Uh-huh.
And so I just got better. You know, I practice. I do practice a lot.
Yeah.
And playing shows helped me get better.
Yeah.
And of course, playing with good people like Ed and all these other people that I've been playing with.
Right.
And you too. It's like you play with these amazing musicians. You want to be,
Right.
you want to shine.
Right.
You know, because there's a lot of pressure. They've been in the business forever and they're really good at what they do. And so it kind of makes us more accountable for, you know, what we're doing as far as what levels we want to reach with our music.
Uh-huh. Very good. And my last question to you is, I'm just in awe of you because you just inspire people. You help other artists. You book other shows for people. But you've helped so many musicians with your podcasts and interviewing them and putting people on stage and sharing other people's music. So you're giving up the spotlight a little bit for someone else, which is very good in Hollywood. Tell me a little bit about what made you do that.
I mean, yes, I do like to help the community, but honestly, the beginnings of when I was doing that was self-serving. Because
Okay.
what happened was I moved to LA, I didn't know anyone.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't get a lot of shows. It's hard when you're first starting out.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to book my own shows.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have a show so that I can play on it.
Yeah, a lot of us do that.
And then, of course, because I was a new indie artist, I would book other unknown indie artists. And that was very important for me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, you know, LA becomes a small community. You do see the same faces on the bill. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get some fresh faces. You know, I would bring people from Long Beach or, you know, from somewhere else that maybe were up and coming, just like myself. Didn't have a big name for themselves yet. So that was kind of the purpose of doing that. When I started the magazine, which I don't have anymore, called Music Emerging, that was because I was so shy and I wanted to network. So I thought a good way to network is to interview people. And then that way I have like a purpose. I can meet them.
Right.
And I'm interviewing them. So there's an action. I'm good with action.
Right.
You know, so it's hard for me to network and not have a job. And so that gave me a job as a kind of screen to meet people. Right. And then the podcast, the same thing. Over the pandemic, I did a podcast, which I'm not doing now, but I try all these different things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and then I just finished a video series, which I shot in Pasadena, and I was interviewing different artists. Right. That keeps me networking and meeting new people, and I feel most comfortable that way, doing a variety of things.
This is the last question, part A of that.
Oh, okay.
You also did, you've invested a lot into your career financially by taking publishing courses, I heard. So you're learning a lot about placement and sync and things like that. Tell me about that class that you took.
Over the pandemic, I took a sync licensing class with Chris SD, and it was almost a year. And I learned all about sync licensing and how to format your music, how to approach music supervisors, that whole thing. That's a whole nother world.
Right, I hear that.
So it went really well, and now after the class, I'm in the process of sending out my music to different libraries and music supervisors, and just learning about that whole world. So I wanted to ask you, there was the pandemic, and both of our music careers slowed down a lot during that time.
Yeah.
But now we've been doing all sorts of shows. So how has that been for you, getting back into the music scene, into the community with all your fans? You have such an amazing group of fans and you interact with them so exuberantly. How has it been performing again?
I find that it was wonderful. I mean, I took to it back to like a fish took to water. I was a little nervous about the first show because I didn't play much during the pandemic. My guitar was a little, kind of lonely, but I think everybody was lonely during the pandemic if you live alone. But I do love performing, and it's been great. And people are coming back out to see me, which is good. Yeah.
Excellent. Now, before the pandemic hit, you had a thriving music career here in LA, and you even had a Starbucks endorsement.
I did.
What was that like?
That was really great because it kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It validated me as an artist because, a lot of times, I get a little insecure about my music. So that was kind of very cool that they liked me. But really what it's about is the fans and the people that I play for, because they get to participate in my shows. I always say my shows are good because the audience participates and the audience makes the show. And I'm kind of like a Peter, Paul and Mary show where it's like sing-along. Mm-hmm. Because my songs are very simple. I say once I pass simple, I'm in trouble. But
once you pass simple, then you're in trouble?
Yes. I like to keep things simple.
Yeah, you have a couple songs that are fan favorites, like Smoke the Hookah.
Right.
And then another one, wait, what's the one I'm thinking?
Rumblin'
Smoke the Hookah and Rumblin' and Tumblin'.
And you know which one else has become a fan favorite is King of Fools.
King of Fools.
Yeah, that's kind of a fun song.
So what is your songwriting process like? When you have your guitar and you get an idea, where does it take you?
First of all, I don't write a song. I can't sit down to write a song. A song has to find me. And I usually take a hit a pot or two, and I turn on my little, at the time, tape recorder or phone, and I just begin, and whatever comes out, it usually comes out in spurts, like a whole verse and a chorus will come out, and then it will stop, and then maybe the next night I'll pick it up, and I may play for like 2 or 3 hours the same. I mean, I'm really about my phrasing when I sing. It's like I could sing rumbling and tumbling until I get it how I want it. Mm-hmm. And but that's kind of my process. The songs find me, and then I kind of mold them in, and I write them down too, and I'll go, oh, I don't like this lyric, and I'll put in another lyric or something like
Where
that.
do you get your ideas? Like, where did you get the idea for King of Fools? That has such imagery, rich imagery, and the lyrics are so profound. Where did you get that idea? From God?
Yeah, that's how they're written for me. It's like kind of interesting because I take credit for my songs, but they just come out of me so easy when they happen. But then there might be a period of 6 months where I won't write anything, and I'll sit down and and all of a sudden I'll sit down another day and something will pop out. And like New York to LA, I started that in Portland, Oregon. And I was on the beach because we rented a house on the beach, and I just came out with "It's a Long Way from New York City." And then the next thing, I came back to LA, and I was sitting out by my fireplace out in the backyard, and I wrote the first 2 opening verses, and then I was going to San Francisco to do a show at Biscuits and Blues, and I had to play 2 hours. And if you know me, I don't like to play 2 hours. I like to play an hour, hour and 10 minutes, 45 minutes. So Bo said, you got to finish that song, New York to LA. So I grabbed my guitar and I actually finished the song in the car.
Oh, wow.
And played it that night, which was very cool.
I would never do that.
Yeah.
Play a song that's brand new like that. That takes a lot of guts.
Yeah. Well, I've been playing it unfinished for maybe 6 months.
Okay.
So it was, and I usually don't play a song unless I'm really comfortable with it. And like I just started playing a song called "Lovin' You" that is I think is a beautiful song, but I just started to perform it, and I wrote that song more than 10 years ago. Yeah.
So you asked me about my partner, Ed Tree, who you recently recorded some tracks for this album. And you
Right.
just mentioned New York to LA, which is the title track.
Right.
So what was the process like recording this latest album? Because it was kind of like a big break between albums, right?
Yeah, big break. So I was playing with a guy by the name of Chris Bolak in Bo Astrup, and we played together for 5 years. And we got really tight, and we bring in a percussionist for the big shows. And so it took 5 years to record this record, and I kept saying to my audience, I'm working on a song, I'm working on a song. I mean, on this album, and they'd all kind of laugh. I said, it'll be here soon. So we recorded the first track at Bo's studio, and it just came out amazingly comfortable. And so I kept that track, and then we went into another studio, and we put on percussion and more guitars and bass. Well, bass was already on. And then we went in another time and recorded King of Fools, and we just kept adding things onto it. And then I stopped the record for almost a year because of budget, and then I asked Ed if he would produce a few songs, which he did, which was an amazing process because he just got in and went bang, 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 and it sounded great because he brought in great musicians. And as a matter of fact, 2 of the songs that he recorded made it to #1 on the MPE charts.
Yes.
And on KB radio charts.
Yes.
So that was very cool.
Raspin is amazing because he's out there in Twitter world just
Yeah.
tweeting away,
I love
and he has
Twitter.
so many fans on Twitter and so many retweets and so many indie stations that play his music.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thank God. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so that's pretty much it with that.
Well, it's been nice talking to you about your music, and we are really great friends.
Yeah,
We've
we
been
are.
for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And we play together, so you got to check our websites out. What is your website?
www.raspin.com.
And CynthiaBrando.com.
What's your
And
Instagram handle?
Cynthia Brando.
Raspin Stewart 4. For what? For everything.
And I just want to thank Entertainment Network Live for having us for this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
We really appreciate it.
We do.
And we'll see you next time.